Hi, my name is Anna Jørgensen. I'm the second generation now in charge of my family domain. The name is Cortes de Cima, and we are located in the south of Portugal in the region called Alentejo, specifically sub-region Vidigueira, although we have vineyards in Vidigueira, and now since 2008 by the coast as well, inside Alentejo. And yeah, basically it's a family vineyard. So my parents, I may not look very Portuguese, though I am. My mother is from California, my dad's from Denmark, and they came to Portugal in '88 looking for a new adventure in life. And they fell in love with this farm in Cortes de Cima in the middle of nowhere, and decided to make that the next chapter of their lives and start a family and start making wine. So they planted vineyards in the early 90s, made the first harvest in '96, and I was born and grew up there. And I guess it's been part of my life ever since. Then I left for 10 years to kind of figure out what wine was for me, working in different places, studying. And then my parents, they asked me to come back in 2019. I took over in 2020 and started the new chapter for the vineyard. We are, as I said, in the south of Portugal, so it's a very warm place, specifically in Vidigueira, which is 100 kilometers from the ocean. So it's a Mediterranean climate, so rainfall is autumn, winter, spring, and then often doesn't rain from May to September, and it gets very warm in summer, and that's something that's been increasing as well. The rainfall has been decreasing over my lifetime, and the peaks of temperature have been increasing. So it's quite a challenging climate, becoming more and more. And then our vineyard on the coast was something that my parents, thinking about climate change as well, decided to, within the Alentejo region, plant somewhere that was more protected from extremes of temperature. So that's 3 kilometers from the ocean, sandy soils, between a river and a mountain range. So it really kind of amplifies that coastal climate right there. And it's significantly cooler there. So we'll have maybe maximum 30 degrees in summer on the coast, but up to 40 plus inland. So yeah, two very different areas. And in the inland vineyard, we're lucky to have two of the most interesting soils for winemaking, granite and limestone, about 50-50 on the estate. So that also gives us a few tools to work with. Regarding how the vineyards are farmed and the varieties, so my parents, when they planted the vineyards in the 90s, they were coming from the outside, inspired by kind of new world winemaking that was happening at the time, international varieties. So it's one of the reasons why we have quite a lot of Syrah, is that my parents, they introduced it illegally in the region at the time, in the 90s. And we even made an illegal wine from it called Incognito, which we still make today, as part of that storytelling of that time. And we're very much influenced by Richard Smart, for example, in the viticulture, and by a type of wine that they realized it wasn't typical at the moment there, but they realized it was possible to make, which was something very juicy, well, maybe not so juicy, more like concentrated, but very fruit forward, in that kind of Parker era of the late 90s, early 2000s. And they were really successful with that. And so they grew from 5 hectares to 240 hectares when I took over in 2020. So they were producing 1.5 million bottles of wine in 2019. But then I took over, and I guess the compromise was, okay, we'll continue with it, but it has to be rethought for the future, for the situation that we're in now, which is very different from where we were 30 years ago. The market, the climate, many things, and also what I want to do with wine. So we converted the vineyards. They were farmed conventionally before, with a lot of inputs, a lot of irrigation, basically what modern mainstream viticulture is, conventional. Converted to organic, that was step one, the whole area. And then we brought consultants in, Marco Simonit, we brought Pedro Parra, and basically mapped out the whole property. And based on that, we were able to reduce the vineyards to the best terroirs and the healthiest vines. So we reduced the vineyards now today to 90 hectares. So still a lot, but a lot less. And the way we farm really cut down on the irrigation and on external inputs. So we produce about 150,000 bottles of wine from that. I feel like it's something that comes just from very deep inside. It's a feeling more than anything else. I guess growing up on a farm, I've always been connected to nature, and just seeing, when finally it's your decision and you're the one, saying, okay, let's spray this. I just knew that wasn't going to happen. It just wasn't an option. And I think working outside of Portugal, seeing a lot of different realities opened my eyes for, what actually is behind truly great wine, and that is like thoughtful farming, living soils, healthy vineyards, and going back to like the climate change part, it was kind of obvious as well that we had to go in this direction if we wanted to, continue doing this in 30 years' time, and to leave the place better than we found it, basically, for the next generation. And the only way, in my conception, to do that is through, all these things that we're talking about. At least organic farming, biodynamics is a great tool, regenerative, polyculture, animals, and it just, the more you do it, the more you want to keep on going further as well. It's like a snowball in a way, and that's kind of how it happened, yeah. My parents, they planted quite a lot of French varieties at the time, but also some Portuguese varieties, but mostly reds. And the interesting fact is that this part of Alentejo, Vidigueira, is historically a white wine area. So if you go back and look at vineyards that are around that are over 100 years old, you rarely find any reds. So there might be one red grape, which is Tinta Grossa, but it's mostly whites. And some of them we hear about and you find in the nurseries like Antão Vaz, Roupeiro, Mantiudo, but many others like I'd never heard about, like Uva Rei, Uva Algibeira, and the list goes on. So we started looking around, exploring these old vineyards. There's also an organization in Portugal called Porvid that has cataloged a lot of the old vineyards and taken cuttings from that. And they've also shown that, yeah, the grape variety in the region that has the greatest genetic diversity is white grape, Antão Vaz. So that shows straight away that's the one that's been there for the longest time. So we've started taking some cuttings from some old vineyards and grafting it onto our vineyard to see what that would taste like in our place. Because the thing is, these wines, they don't exist commercially. So it's also kind of you're opening a new door to the past in a way. So that's been really interesting. And at the same time, we are adapting our architecture because the vineyards were planted in a typical VSP, modern, mechanizable vineyard system that you find all over the world. But we realize today that that's not adapted to our conditions. There's too much exposure. That's kind of the main issue. We need to have a more 3D architecture that creates more shade. So for sure, going back to some kind of a bush vine system, whether that's, still mechanizable, so in a row, some kind of a palmette inspired by the old vines that we saw. And so Marco Simonit has been helping us as well in trying to develop a new architecture with those local genetics that are hyper adapted to the place. And I believe that is really the next step for us in resilience and diversity and identity as well, that truly shows what's special about the place. I suppose my parents, as they were farming conventionally, they were also making wine conventionally, because that's normally how those things go together. So that means using industrial yeast and adding, from a huge list of things that you can add to wine, which is conventional winemaking. So when I took over, kind of the first thing I did, vintage 2020, was to stop using any added yeast, because I'd got enough experience working in other wineries to see that, well, it's not a big deal, they're there and they're going to ferment. But the whole team was like, whoa, what's she doing, This is not going to go well. But then they saw it worked, and now like everybody's convinced. But that's also, I think, a funny part of these transformations, is how the team adapts to that, because they're not used to it. But then seeing something work, they're like, okay, this makes a lot of sense. So that was kind of a big change. But I guess, of course, if you're trying to farm more naturally, working with nature, trying to produce grapes that are really, really representative of place and very healthy, of course, you don't want to do too much to change that in the cellar. And so that's really our philosophy, is to respect as much as possible the farming and the terroir. But that also, in my philosophy, also means that we do add sulfur when needed, basically, because we don't want the wine to go too far away from what we think is representative of the place. So lots of, caring for the wine, tasting, analysis, but more like guiding than, making per se. What I look for in wine is something that's changed a lot over the course of my life. I used to, I think, look a lot more at, I don't know, what was meant to be great wine. So looking more, which I think is part of, forming your idea, looking more at regions, labels, trying, really hard to taste everything, whether that was like doing the Wesset or things like that. Now I'm looking for something completely different. I'm looking for emotion at the end of the day. I want wines that say something to me, that are in a way alive, that move me, which I know is asking a lot. But I feel like once you start drinking those kind of wines, it's hard to not want that in the end. And that's, I guess, also what I look to make in the end. And I think that's the process. We're lucky to farm our grapes, all of them, and to really, follow all those steps throughout the farming, not just of the grapes, so what's around, like having animals, having forest, having that impact, and like bringing all that life and care into the bottle.